and behold, the Trudeau regime is after our guns even further. How you doing, Tony?
I'm fine, Corey. How are you?
Good, good. I mean, again, as I said at the kickoff of the show, I mean, it's mixed. As a media guy, I love this. I mean, I got no shortage of stuff to rant and rave about. But as a citizen, I try not to weep because it's just gets worse and worse.
Yep, I understand very, very well. And at times with this whole thing that Trudeau is doing is so preposterous that it's everything you can do to not chortle about it. But there is possibilities that things could get ugly. I don't think they're very big possibilities. I think right now the feds are going to be concentrating on the dealer guns. That's what the first part of the program is. And I think that they're going to find some cooperation. And the reasons are pretty simple. I mean, the dealers have been sitting there with 4 years of stock that they can't sell. The insurance rates on prohibited items are astronomically high. And so they've been having to sit there and look at, sometimes in the cases of hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars worth of stock that's just sitting there gathering dust and they can't sell it.
Yeah, I mean, it's one thing with we can only guess. We wouldn't counsel Canadians to ever ignore a law, but I suspect a lot of people who might have found property suddenly on that banned list aren't going to rush out to turn it in. They're going to wait out this government and hope that these things become repealed later. But if you're in a business, that's a different sort of position. Everything's been registered. You're not going to lose your business to take one for the team. It's kind of like restaurant lockdowns. People said, you should just open your doors and ignore it. Well, okay, but when the health department closes your doors, you got to make your mortgage.
That's exactly the point.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, I think that from the CSSA's point of view, we're going to recommend that people do not turn in their firearms until the very, very last moment. And that is a week after the next election at worst.
Mm-hmm.
So we know that the Conservatives are going to reverse Trudeau's gun bans. They've said that publicly many, many times. And that's good. That's good because they're not smart laws. They're stupid laws. And they're laws that only affect the law-abiding because, of course, by their nature, criminals don't obey the law. So they're not going to be doing any of their turn-ins. These laws that they're passing, of course, they're the liberal-style reaction to the Nova Scotia shootings. But they completely fail to recognize that every single one of the guns that the bad guy used was illegal and smuggled in from the United States. So they're going to take one on with the firearms community across Canada and try to make this terrible tragedy our fault. And it's just the gift that keeps on giving for the Liberals. And Trudeau's got a problem with some Montreal ridings, and last week was the anniversary of the Montreal massacre, and he wasn't invited to the memorial. That's the second year in a row he wasn't invited because Paulie Saint-Sauveur said that he wasn't welcome because these gun laws didn't go far enough. So just the day before, whammo, here comes a whole bunch of new gun legislation. And sure enough, the Liberals are there.
Yeah, well, so, I mean, we got a lot to unravel. Like, for those of us getting a little longer in the muzzle, we've been dealing with this for a long time. Allen Rock and what was it, C-68 back then, I believe?
C-68, yeah, absolutely. It's still in force.
The registry and the it failed, but it still it punished a lot of businesses. I remember going into a firearms range in Calgary, and before C-68 was coming in, they had literally a barrel full of old 303s. They were liquidating for $50 each because they just had to get rid of them because otherwise they'd have to pay to register them all. I mean, the damage gets done. That's part of the problem, right? We can reverse it later, but we can't put the toothpaste back in the tube with some of these things.
That's right. And you've got now people who were caught in this first wave, the 2024 Ordering Council. 2020 Ordering Council that banned 1,500 makes and models, which now, by the way, is up close to 2,000 makes and models. And then people took a look at these guns that they could no longer use. They went out and bought similar ones that they could use, and now they've been banned in this recent add-on of another 324 makes and models. And we shouldn't get caught into those numbers very well, because we're actually talking about tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of actual guns.
Yeah, and poorly targeted. I mean, again, it's always
Yeah.
the assault style, ones that look scary but aren't necessarily as dangerous as some others might be. And the ludicrous suggestion, oh, we're going to send these to Ukraine because they want them over there. I mean, they've got some 22 rimfire rifles on that list. I don't think
21.
Ukrainian soldiers want those.
Yeah, 21 of the makes and models on that list are rimfires. This is the most preposterous nonsense I've ever heard. The Ukraine is looking for cruise missiles, not Canadian target rifles. And
Oh,
that the
and those
Liberals
aren't being used in crimes. I mean, you don't see a guy robbing a 7-Eleven with a competitor's, target rifle.
no, absolutely you don't. And most people are not thinking of the absurdity of this whole ridiculous notion about sending them to the Ukraine. We're doing this as a commemoration to the 14 beautiful young ladies that were horribly murdered. And we're going to send them to Ukraine so they can use them to shoot young men.
Yeah, it's
absurd.
This whole government in general has been bizarre. And something else that stood out of the politicization of this, the way they're playing it. And not that I want to see it expanded or moved to more bans, but it's funny how they keep overlooking SKSs. But the reality is, because Indigenous people use them, hundreds of thousands of them are out there, and they use them for hunting, and they don't want to step into the hornet's nest. Now, the SKS is a carbine, a powerful semi-automatic that unfortunately has been used terribly at times by people. If you were to ban, and you shouldn't ban any of them, but that would be, you would think, a little higher on the list, yet they won't touch that with a 10-foot pole, those cowards.
No, well, they're saying they're going to, actually. They're going to do this in the next round next month or something like that. But the odds of that ban going through are about the same as the odds of the last ban going through. People are going to wait till the last minute, and as soon as there's an election, the Conservative government will immediately put a stop payment on that check, and it's all over. But you're totally right about the SKS. Like our numbers right now say there's about 550,000 of them in Canada. None of them are registered.
No, they're not restricted.
And they're not restricted. That's right. So, we always maintained when we were getting rid of the long gun registry that the only reason that any government would ever register anything is to tax it or to take it. And here you go. They're taking everything that they know where it is. But how do they do the stuff that's not registered? Even if it was registered at some point in time, the last old registration document is many years old now, and this stuff has simply vanished. This whole thing was an illusion to begin with, because they couldn't pull it off.
And it turns law-abiding citizens into criminals. It gets tiresome. Could you imagine being a law enforcement officer? Say something came up a couple years from now, and they did ban the SKS, and they found out that a fella up on the Peace River, the Assumption Reserve, has an SKS. We want you to go bang on his door and take it from him.
Yeah.
Why are we pointlessly putting officers at risk in a situation that was never a problem, when they got much better things, or I'd like to think better things, to be doing with their time?
Well, certainly they do. I mean, I'm down here in the GTA, and we're getting multiple shootings every day. And funny enough, none of them are sport shooters.
No.
I know that sounds incredulous, but it's just hard to believe. And there it is. None of them are sport shooters.
Getting back to what your association does, nobody despises the illegal and dangerous and harmful use of a firearm more than a responsible firearm owner. We would like to see real crackdowns on the real problem. hopefully in a side, unexpected way with increased border controls. It isn't so much we worry about Canadians flooding into the States, but we are getting a lot of illegal firearms coming north from down there. And maybe some of these increased controls might get some of those at least, because that's where we need to focus.
Absolutely. And the government has been saying for years and years, every budget, they're giving another $300 million to CBSA so they can increase their scrutiny on the border to stop illegal objects and substances from coming across. But nobody ever looks at the other half of the CBSA budget where they take $300 million out of another program. They haven't put any net money into CBSA in years. And now, I got to give the Conservatives credit. They got some good ideas on this. They're talking about things like scanners at the borders so that containers can be scanned. It's not a bad idea. It only takes a few minutes to go through a scanner, and they can at least see some things, but at least it's something material and concrete that might actually do some good.
Yeah, so keep back to the Conservatives. They're certainly saying the right things, and I like to believe they're going to reverse everything when they get in. But every politician, you got to stay on their case. I mean, if they get in with a majority, suddenly sometimes things become not as much of a priority any longer. I mean, when the National Energy Program was taken away by Brian Mulroney, he actually milked Alberta for a year and some before he got rid of it. Are you guys as well? I mean, just keeping tabs on these Conservative politicians, we got to remind them the day after, okay, guys, follow through.
Absolutely. And, we have been in constant conversations with them for many years. We are reasonably satisfied that they're going to do what they say right away. Pierre Poilievre has, like most politicians, a 100-day, the first 100-day spread. And I'm glad to know that this is included in that first 100 days. Given the urgency and the immediacy of the amnesty expiring just a few days after the election, I know they're on top of this. They've assured me they're on top of it. So, what do I think they'll do it? Yes, I think Mr. Poilievre will do everything he says he will.
Yeah, my point's just that we always have to be vigilant. It just, the lobby groups don't go away just because a better government comes in, because that government won't be in forever either. So that kind of leads to the next question, which is a bit tougher. What can we do to stop this endless cycle back and forth, like better entrenched property rights and things like that?
I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. We live in a democracy. Any law that is made can be changed. The only thing that you really could entertain is putting this into the Constitution. And the Constitution is designed in such a way that it's very difficult to add a charter right. And not only that, they can use the notwithstanding clause to override charter rights. So even that's not foolproof. I think what we have to do, and we've been saying this for a long time, number of decades at least, you got to be very careful who you vote for. I know that sounds trite, but you really do have to be careful who you vote for. You look at the policies, for example, of, say, the People's Party. And I know that I'm sure that some of your listeners are members of the People's Party. And some of the gun policy stuff is great, but they're not going to get elected, no matter what. They're not. So you got to go with the solutions that you have that are viable. And Mr. Poilievre has been fantastic on our issues. He's never wavered away from them, not for one day. And I really do have a considerable amount of faith that they will do what they say when they get elected.
That's good, and we again, it's just the game never stops. There's election after election. You'll go back and forth. The other part, I think, between elections is staying active in your firearm community. I mean, you need the groups like yours, and there's other groups as well, but just to network, to make sure you're watching for these things, because unfortunately, there's still a bit of an attitude. It's not unique to Canada. For non-firearm owners, it's like, that's not my problem. What do I care? Well, we got to make sure to defend ourselves and remind other people it is important for property rights, even if you don't partake.
Sure. I mean, people were looking at AR-15s 4 years ago and saying, I don't own an AR-15. That's not my problem. and then they banned their African hunting rifle, and all of a sudden they get upset, or they went out and they got rid of their stuff that they had before, just put it in the closet because they couldn't use it, and they went out and bought something else. Now that's been banned too. It's a ratchet, and it's never going to end until the anti-gun people have got the very last BB gun. It's never going to end because it's not about reality, it's about philosophy.
Yeah, and that ideology is hard to reason with. And I mean, some of those numbers, a lot of people don't realize Canada has actually got one of the most highly armed civilian populations on the planet.
Yeah.
The Americans have some terrible shootings that happen, but that's a cultural thing that they have to address.
Yeah.
If it was proportional, we would have quite a few of those shootings going on up here too, because we have actually a lot of firearms up here, even if people don't realize it, and it's not happening. That annoys me too, is when we see lobbyists up here pointing at American issues and then applying what they feel are solutions to Canadian legislation. Well, hold on, we're different countries.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can include Sweden, Finland, Switzerland, Italy, all in that group. They have very, very high gun owning populations, and they aren't plagued with the nonstop school shootings and terrible things that the American culture seems to suffer from. But our culture doesn't suffer from this stuff very often. Like every country, occasionally you get a lunatic. I don't know how you can legislate against lunatics, because sometimes they just rent a van and go driving up Yonge Street in Toronto, killing people. And how do you legislate against that? Well, it's beyond me. Maybe Jordan Peterson's got an answer, but I don't. However, that isn't something that Cory Morgan did. And that's not something that Tony Bernardo did. And so we're the ones that are getting hit on the chin for the actions of other people. And that is just contrary to what our society is supposed to be about.
Yeah, I think I could be misquoting it, Penn Jillette, who said, great quote at one point, something like, whenever something really bad happens, the government steps in and takes away rights from good people. It's a reactive way that they don't address the actual problem, and it actually becomes worse for us.
Sure. Penn Jillette's a very philosophic man.
In his ways, for sure.
In his ways, yeah. But that is the ultimate point against further gun control. The only people that are affected by it are the law-abiding. In which case, what is the point?
No, I mean, it should just be outcome-based policy, and they're not seeing a better outcome from it. So, I mean, a reasonable person would shift. We don't have those in Ottawa right now. Hopefully it changes. So
I think you have to ask more to the point, why would a government like the Trudeau government not go after the criminals? Well, I think that's more to the point.
A much bigger discussion, absolutely, and that applies to a lot of things. All right, well, before I let you go, you've been doing great work on this, and I really appreciate it. Where can people find you and your organization so they can keep up with these things and perhaps support you in this?
They can just do a Google search for the CSSA, Canadian Shooting Sports Association, and we'll come right up, and you can go onto our website. You can make donations off the website. You can join up. You can read our weekly news that goes out every single Thursday. And we'd love to have you. We're, right now 38,000 strong and growing. And so we'd love to get you on the winning team.
Great. Okay. Well, thanks again, Tony. It was good to talk to you. It's been a while. I appreciate the work you're doing. Hopefully we'll see some changes soon, and at least for another couple election cycles, we can be confident our property is okay.
Well, that's right. And I think sometime about a year from now, maybe you and I'll be sitting down having a beer and toasting it.
There we go. And doing some target shooting nicely and legally and safely.
Sounds good. Thanks, Cory.